Hello, Badfinger fans, and welcome to the Vinyl Verdict, where today I am sharing my exciting conversation with Kevin McElligott. Kevin is an audio engineer and has worked on the mastering and restoration for many Badfinger recordings over the years. Most recently, he worked on Ivy's Anthology 4. We also talked about his work stretching back a quarter of a century now. Just to illustrate Kevin's involvement in these projects, I want to show you the difference between the original version of a song he received for Gwent Gardens.
So I'll just walk out in the rain.
And the final restored version that appeared on Gwent Gardens after Kevin worked on it.
Baby, you will never see.
Without further ado, here's my conversation with Kevin.
I didn't even realize it until my oldest son mentioned it to me last night. How long you been doing this? I was like, I think around 97, 98. He goes, Dad, I was born in 93. He goes, this is crazy. I was like, yeah. I work as a sound designer or engineer 5 days a week, 40 hours a week, but this is my thing. And like I said, it's my way of giving back. I've never taken a nickel for doing this. Yeah. I do this for the pure love and for the music, for the fans to get it out, and for the guys, for Pete, yeah. Tom, Mike, Bob.
How'd you get interested, and what kind of projects have you worked on to date?
Yeah, well, my original interest was, I'm lucky enough to have had two older brothers, 4 years older than me and 6 years older than me, to the point where, like, my first concert that I went to I was 7 years old, 1971. I sat in the second row for the Jay Giles Band in Central Park. My father actually ran the Schaefer Music Festival with Ron Belzer. And I saw Peter Wolf that night, and he, took the crowd to church. And, I saw that, and I was like, I want to play music. I want to be a lead singer. I want, and that kind of just started me on my path. I was always fascinated with tape recorders and that whole thing. When I was a kid, I was 5 years old. My brother had a Radio Shack reel-to-reel. I played with it. And my older brothers got into Badfinger. And when they played, I think the first album that they brought home, never sequentially, but straight up, when I heard Baby Blue and Day After Day the first time, it was like, what is this? It was like a whole new world, just like, wow, just everything was like on another level. It was up there with the Beatles or anything else I heard. And I didn't really know anything really detailed about them as a kid. I was only 12 when that came out. They fell off, and then I remember seeing they were gone. And then my brother came home one day and he was like, yeah, Pete Ham is dead, and I was like, wow, and I didn't know anything about it other than to say, what it was. And then a few years later, it was Saturday afternoon, and I'm watching American Bandstand and Badfinger, and it's like, Tommy and Joey. And I was like, wow, what's going on? Say No More album came out a few years later. I was keeping on. They would pop up every once in a while. They'd sometimes pop up. I saw them in 1983 on the British Invasion tour, and it was Joey, Bob Jackson, Mike Gibbons, Al Wadkey, and then that's when I found out about Tom. And I was like, wow, this is sad. And it was always gnawing at me. It's like, how could these guys have put out such amazing music, and what? And then you hear the backstories kind of later on when I saw Dan had a book. And I just kind of reached out to him. And I said, hey, I'm an audio engineer. If you ever need any assistance with anything, let me know. I do restoration, I do mixing, I do sound design, I do whatever. And sure enough, he took me up on it right around when Behind the Music started. There's certain things I'd love for them to use for Pete and Tommy, but it's a mess, and they're not going to have the time to clean it up. Would you like to do it? So that's when I cleaned up the Steve Crater phone calls and interviews of Pete did with a Toronto, I think it was a guy from a Toronto radio station for the Behind the Music. And then after that, Dan had come into New York for a weekend, and we started working on the first Ivy's live set. And it had all of Pete Ham's home demo reel-to-reels in there. And I was just sitting there I was like, holy shit, look at this. And one of the most fascinating things I dug out was Name of the Game. Producers on it. It was Phil McDonald was the engineer, and it said producers GHPS, George Harrison, Phil Spector. And it was 6 mixes of Name of the Game. The first version that Emmerich did, but with horns in it and different horn parts played and their take on it. So I guess this was They were trying to see if they could salvage what was originally done before they went on to the next incarnation of it. And I like the original version of Name of the Game better than the album version. It's just
Not alone. Yeah.
I just love that. And then Dan would reach out, and I started, just doing restoration. He was very hands-on, and if he got overwhelmed, he'd say, "Hey, can you help me out?" And then that's how I kind of stayed in with that. And then, after he passed, I was asked if I would, step in, and I have some really great restoration tools that are available now. I've got about 6 different ones, because sometimes there's no real science, but one piece of software will work better than another one on a certain track. It's fun, it's time consuming, but for me, it's my way of giving back. I'm a father and a grandfather now. It was for the kids I did that, for Mike's kids, for Petra, for Steven, that's why I got involved. It was my way to give back and try to preserve their father's legacies.
That's awesome. And clearly, I think, especially in the last couple of years, we really feel the momentum of those legacies building.
We finished Gwent Gardens, and I was working on the Ivy stuff. I worked on that a long time. It's a big set. And in the middle of it, I reached out to Mark and to Tom. I said, "Listen, we have Tom tracks, right?" They were like, "Yeah, we have an idea of what a first album would be." I said, "Okay, send me the tracks. I want to work on them on my own." So I worked on them, and I just fell in love with the set, sent it to those guys to check out, and they were like, "Wow." I have a little bit of a relationship with the Evans family. I sent them over to Steve and Marion. I said, "Hey, we're thinking about this." And I said, "I just wanted to get your opinion on this and see how you feel about these tracks." And they were completely blown away. So this was like around March or so, and then Tom and Mark and we met in New York City, and we were having dinner at the Palm, and we're just talking about stuff. And I said, "Hey, can I just say something?" I said, "We need to get this Tom Evans set out." And they were like, "Yeah, why don't we?" And it was like in the middle of this 2-hour dinner, everything just came together, and then we reached out, and then we said, "Okay, let's get it out for his birthday." And we reached out to Rich at Y&T, and everything has just fallen together, and it's been phenomenal that it has. It's just being done for the right reasons. We want to give this to the fans, and we want to preserve the legacy of these guys.
Yeah, the Tom Evans demo disc especially. I mean, it's like that had been sitting around for 55 years. I think we got a trickle of them on those I had no idea the extent of, and I still think obviously there's more out there after.
Oh yeah, there is. Yeah. I can assure you there is. There is. And, there's so much that we have for the future. I can say that. Right now, I'm actually working on a Pete Ham acoustic album, which is 28 tracks, and I'm about halfway through it.
Wow.
And it's just incredible. I've seen doodles that Pete did. He was amazing. Like illustrations he did. It's just like, wow. He was just like a real Renaissance man. I mean, he did everything.
Is there anything that you've had to veto from like a technical feasibility of like, we just can't get this to the level that it's audible? Or
luckily, in the past, I would have had to. But the plugins that I have for Pro Tools that have come out in the last year and a half have taken things that are would have been unusable to like, okay, I can do this. I can clean this up. I can fix it. There might have been one little clip where there was just this crazy distortion on a track. I forgot which project it was, but I think what I did was I grabbed the section from a later part of the song and dropped it in just to cover the edit, because it was like a blast of distortion across, like a loss in the recording. So, but other than that, it is what they did.
Yeah, so your first involvement was on those like Without You discs, those bonus discs.
Yeah.
Were you originally dealing with the analog and actually the transfer from Revox to digital, or do you work primarily with just like the digital files?
I actually had, when I was in my old studio in Manhattan, and I had all the reel-to-reels there. So I was transferring from the reel-to-reels, like that Name of the Game. I actually had my assistant put that up on a machine. I was like, all right, let's just pray we don't shed, and now, we have to have things baked to get them even close. You bake them and you got one shot to transfer them. So
yeah, that's what makes me nervous.
Mark and I and Tom are huge fans of Mike Gibbons' songwriting and stuff. And I can share that Ellie sent me some things that were nobody knew Mike had and sent them to me just a few months ago, and I'm having those things taken care of. I sent them to somebody to bake and digitize, and that's going to be down the road, I think, going to be a great surprise to people.
That's great. Yeah, I've been well, it's a pleasant surprise even on these Ivy's anthology discs, how much Mike Gibbons stuff is. I had no idea he was writing so much that early.
Yeah. No, it's incredible. He was like they always say, he was Badfinger's secret weapon, and you know, I mean, he wrote some beautiful songs. I was fortunate enough to do one thing for Mike. When I was doing stuff for Dan, I had actually sent an email to Bob. I sent an email to Joey, and I sent an email to Mike and said, hey, if you ever have anything you want restored, cleaned up, whether it's for a release or for yourselves, just send it my way. I'll be happy to do it. This was like... I can tell you exactly the weekend because it's before September 11th. It was that Saturday at 6 o'clock in the evening.
Wow.
My family and I just ordered a whole mess of Chinese food, which we do on Saturday nights. And we're sitting down, my phone rings, and I look, and it's some number I don't have identified. It says Florida. I was like, okay. And I answer the phone. I was like, yeah, can I speak to Kevin? I was like, yeah, who's this? He goes, it's Mike Gibbons from Badfinger. I was like, oh. My head was spinning. I said, eat dinner, I have to take this call. And we just started talking, and he's the warmest guy, funny guy, one of the best storytellers you could ever meet. And he was just, I loved him. You know, over the course of 3-4 months doing stuff and sending things back and getting his opinion. And I miss him. Ellie's become a good friend. I love her to death. She's from Detroit. And I find that Detroit women are a lot like New York women. She's just like my wife. My wife's a tough Italian, and she's a tough Detroiter, man. And I love her for it.
That's awesome. So wait, out of curiosity, you said the weekend before 9/11, was that, I know he worked on that, is it that Dream Harder CD?
That Dream Harder, yeah, he put that out right after 9/11.
So that was written in response to it, though, right?
Yeah.
So, but he was working on a project already before that.
Mike had a studio set up at his house, and he was always, he was always recording. He was, he had the more annoying songs. He had about 3 or 4 he was putting out. He was prolific at that one point, around that time. He just I guess it was right after 9/11, whether it was a day or 2 days after, but knocked it out.
Yeah, that was quick.
It was good. Yeah, he sent me. It was the DBA Badfinger. It was him, that incarnation, doing business as Badfinger is how he called it. And it was him, Bob Jackson, Reed Kaling, Donnie Dacus, and Tommy. And man, they were so tight. That band was tight.
Wait, that's that 82, 83?
82, 83. That was it. Yeah, he sent me. It was not the greatest audience recording. And I had to kind of clean it up and take one track and kind of fake stereo it, gave it a little fake stereo and stuff, and got it as best as I could. Yeah. But the energy, it was the performance of that band was tight. I mean,
some of those songs had never been played anywhere else, so it was cool.
Yeah, exactly. Sooner or later, yeah. And you could hear the crowd was into it. Those guys, they had a great chemistry between all of them. It was a nice little document, a nice little snapshot of where they were. But yeah, that was my extent of working with them. But it was like, I was talking to Mike once or twice a week, and sometimes it wasn't even about anything, but just shooting a breeze.
That's awesome.
That's how he was.
He had a real kick during that last decade. I feel like the legacy that we're talking about, to just get it out there, like that DVA was like, I got to get that out. I got to write more songs. I'm going to redo in the meantime, whatever it was, some inspiration.
It was just, he had the bug.
I'm curious, maybe going back to the Reeboks quickly, because as one of you got to be one of a handful of people that ever physically saw these. Was it divided that like each member would record on their own independent Reeboks? There's like a Mike tape, a Tom tape, a Pete tape, or did they?
Yeah, basically that's how I've been getting them. I mean, like sometimes they're a 5-inch reel, which is like it could be one song 5 times. Sometimes 7-inch. It all depends. But literally, most of the times when they're doing demos, a lot of times it was just the one guy going. And Pete was known for like working all night, in the studio and playing multiple. He'd multi-track it himself.
Yeah, Pete has that background as a bit of an engineer, right? Mm-hmm. His recordings just always sound like there's some attention to how closely it's mic'd and the way he's able to get like even fret sounds versus the Tommy stuff. The songwriting is incredible. His harmonies are incredible. The guitar work always sounds very distant and kind of
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's almost. I guess Pete might have been like you said, he might have just taken that extra time and known how to do it. Not everybody knows, throw the mic up, put the machine and record and go. And a lot of times it's just a matter of getting the idea on tape as opposed to, oh, okay, somebody's going to try to use this 60 years from now and
Right.
put it out, as opposed to, Pete probably was just trying, that was his way to maybe sell songs to the guys to have it sound as great as possible. I know Pete, before he was in the band, he was TV repairman with his cousin.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So he had that electronics, and he had the mind for it.
Incredibly sounding home demos. They just sound so. I'm sure some of that is the work that you can put into them and restore today. But I'm just curious if you ever get one from another band member or even Pete's demos, and it's like the gain is just way too high, or so. The recording process was just not.
Yeah, sometimes guys don't. They don't. If some people just don't know any better, just turn the pots up to record up to 10. Oh, it should be as loud as it goes. Not knowing gain, how gain works and gain structure works, or just placing a microphone. Where does the mic go? How close should I be to the mic? You get mouth pops all over the place sometimes with certain guys.
It's like a lot of times it's multiple takes of the same track, or you have different songs of the same era. I've noticed with some of the most recent releases, it's awesome to hear the count-ins or like a little bit of not like the Beatles recordings where some of those demos you really get them talking a bit in the session. Is there more banter that maybe just hasn't been?
Not really. From the ones I get, like I said, Tom sends me the files.
Yeah.
And and even when I've gotten them, I mean, it's just count offs. So usually when you have the whole band in there, and you count off, but it's like Pete doing it. He's not going to need to count off, the count offs when the guys are together and stuff. There's not an endless amount of tape. So you're trying to save. They weren't very flush with money. So you always trying to get the most out of every reel of tape as you could.
Yeah, that is true. And it's, they were very, workmanlike. I feel like when they did go into the studio, just getting it done and focusing on it as they needed to. So
no, and the thing I really appreciate about the Ivy stuff is Ron is such a great singer, and the harmonies that those guys that they did.
A lot of the Badfinger stuff, I think even the Ivy stuff, it was all like the harmonies were all recorded, one track, one mic. So that was a lot of challenges if you need to remix in any way.
Yeah. It's like the old 4-track cassette. The thing is, you go 4, 3, 2, 1, so you can get 10 tracks on. So you get your basic tracks, bounce it down to 1 track, but you got to get it exactly right because there's no change in that. Once that's baked in, then the 3 gets. So then you get down to that last track, and everybody's singing. But when you're playing with guys and you're singing with them all the time, even if it takes 5 takes, 6 takes, it's not a big deal. I played with my 2 older brothers. We had Tommy Ramone was our producer, and my oldest brother was a drill sergeant. And like when we got into the studio, like our engineer would say, "You guys are amazing," because everything was done within 3 or 4 takes. We didn't have a lot of money, so when we rehearsed the week before going into record, that's all we did. Whatever we would cut demos of, that's what our press. So we got in there, and it was like boom, and then the rest of the time was for vocals, for overdubs, for guitar breaks, whatever. When you have a tight unit, it's a lot easier.
Yeah, and just doing it live, I think. I mean, with the Beatles, especially, it's incredible when you go back and hear the recordings that didn't even have monitors or anything. Their volume control was always perfect on the harmony.
Oh yeah, you go back and listen to the live at the Hollywood Bowl, and you listen to their harmonies on Twisted Shout, and then you go and you realize they couldn't hear anything. All they said that was they was just screaming. They couldn't hear themselves, and it's pretty amazing that they just did it.
They stay in pretty much in there.
Yeah.
Is there any like pitch controller? Because I know that's a controversial one with the Beatles stuff that they're going in and repitching things a little bit sometimes.
Not doing anything.
Okay.
No. Nah. This is them. This is Tom, Mike, Ron, Pete, everybody as they are.
Curious to get like your lightning reaction. Dolby Atmos.
I've been in, like I said, I'm in the business 40 years. I've got a surround set up in my home studio. And Atmos, I get the whole thing, but it's like I don't ever see it for home. I mean, I just people can't even set up a goddamn stereo properly at home, much less
Everyone listening to on their phone and laptop anyway.
Yeah,
That's unbelievable.
and me delivering for my stuff for networks and stuff. I'm doing these mixes on great things, and it's like they're listening. So one of my last checks, I have a plug-in that recreates 15-inch laptop speakers. So I always
That's crazy.
monitor through that at the last time. It's all right.
That's
Let me just
unbelievable.
adjust this.
Yeah,
And
because well, I've
that's
heard
what I
that
do.
there's really professional albums that come out now that you can tell were mixed on headphones, like no,
Oh
like
yeah,
clearly bass boost, and then you listen to it on any speakers and you can't hear any lyrics.
no,
It's crazy. Yeah.
exactly. And it's like you don't mix in headphones. It's not.
Yeah.
I drive my wife nuts if I'm in between waiting for approvals. My stereo is up full blast up in the studio. She's just like, Jesus Christ, will you turn it down? It's like, nah,
That's
this
awesome.
is how music's supposed to be listened to. When I work on this stuff, I'll go back and I went back to No Dice. I started listening. I was like, wow, this is pretty amazing. Joey steps in and like, how many songs is he like the main guy like on
Yeah.
his first album? I loved the Magic Christian soundtrack. I think that's a great album in and of itself. And then you go to this and it's like all right, they kind of change the dynamic of the band. It's more rocky stuff, but like Joey's voice comes right, he fit like a glove. And then
Yeah.
how do you argue with that album? How do you argue with Straight Up, Ass, Badfinger,
And
and
that's what got the US fans interested in everything. And
yeah,
that's why I'm a little bit curious. I've read interviews with Mike towards the end of his life where, he's really mentioning like we never should have even gone the Badfinger direction, right? Like he mentions that the Ivies had so much potential, we should have stuck with that. I completely agree with you that that's in there. That's a layer within Badfinger, but there's also that Joey side of like
yeah.
Edge, the Rock, and that's pushing them all to be more innovative. Did Mike ever say anything to that effect? Did he have like that appreciation for the Wish You Were
I,
Here and all that stuff too?
Yeah, he loved the Ivies and he loved Badfinger and kind of said to me, if Ron never left, Pete would still be here. This is my gathering is that there was towards the end tensions going and it's understandable, right? With all the mismanagement that was going on, that's what happened and things kind of frayed. And I guess that's when you say to yourself, okay, when we first started out, you had three guys from Wales together and they were all good mates and Badfinger is great and different.
Their live act was unbelievable. And a lot of
Oh
that
yeah.
is the Joey Pete kind of
Oh
double
yeah. Plus,
solo.
remember what was it? Grapefruit Records, the BBC live at the BBC.
I got it on vinyl. That was incredible.
Oh,
But that was a soundboard. I think they got a stereo, right? That they were able to mix it at least in
I
stereo.
think so. Yeah. I
But
mean,
is there anything else like that out there? Or just that's what baffles me about. They're like, no one thought to record these guys. Like they're playing with the Beatles, they have number ones and
I did that with the DBA. It depends on how. I guess it depends on how far away they are from the source, from the band, how much noise is going on around them.
Yeah.
But again, what I had back 2001 versus what I have now, it's vastly, vastly different. And I might be able to work with some stuff. I'm interested to give it a try. I've just been so busy.
I hope that gets into the queue along with, of course, the acoustic demos and the Ivy stuff. And I just hope someone's also thinking about live recording.
Oh yeah, listen. One of the things that we've talked about that I would kill for was when they did that short tour with the Man Band when they were a 5-piece.
That was my like number one thing but I don't think, to your knowledge, is there anything ever out there? No. Yeah.
To my knowledge, no. You always think, yes, there's a finite amount, and there is a finite amount, but I got to tell you, Pete was prolific when it came to putting things down to tape. All these guys were, and there's a mountain of stuff. I mean, honestly, I could see stuff being released for like at least another 5 or 6 years. Head First coming out now,
Yeah.
50 years, dead on, perfect timing, and hopefully this builds some more momentum and more excitement, and people are more receptive. The job that Rich is doing at Y&T with the packaging for Gwent Gardens and I Am Myself and How Much Is This Guy is fabulous. And what you're going to see with Head First is just spectacular. And it's like, this is what they've deserved all along. When that is put out, people will then say, okay, this has been a serious investment by these people to give it a proper, this is worth my time to pick this up. You have a tangible copy of something like, Gwent Gardens, here it is. You hold it, you're like, wow, all right, this is awesome.
It's true. And there's no limit. Well, I was going to say there's no limit because you can just put it online, right? Like anyone, but I guess the
Yeah.
limit is bandwidth. If you're involved in all this.
But it would be nice to be able to give them all that same treat. They all deserve it. As far as I'm concerned, they'll deserve it. And I think that the fans would appreciate that as opposed to just downloading. I mean, I'm a boomer, so I like having a tactile thing, something to touch. One of my favorite pieces I ever got on eBay. This is a Badfinger fan club.
Wow.
Card.
I didn't know there was a Badfinger fan club.
Yep, and it's autographed by all four guys. I picked this about 20 years ago off of eBay, and I knew the it's all in ink, and I knew their hand signatures from documents I'd seen, so I knew it was all authentic. And Viv Jones, who used to work for Brian Epstein, I shared it online one time. She goes, "Yeah, I remember those cards getting sent out."
Wow.
So that's theirs.
There must not have been much of that fan club. I've never heard of that. Like they didn't do Christmas. I guess the Ivies did that Christmas record. I think so. Maybe
that's
it was
right.
Like
yeah, they did.
Badfinger era or something. Because that's pretty amazing.
Mike and Joey were touring together, playing the Rock and Roll Cafe in New York City, and my brother went early in the afternoon to get tickets because he only found out that day, and he went in there at like 2:00 in the afternoon and get the tickets, and Joey and Mike were in there, and my brother was like started talking to them, and my sister-in-law was with my brother, and he's going on and on. Joey turns to my sister. He goes, "Does he drive you crazy with this?" He goes, "What the hell?" I think like when you're a fan of Badfinger, it's like there's no halfway. I think like you're like a fanatic, you know. He was like in his glory, and he goes, "And Mike," he goes, "I'm telling you, Mike. I mean, you played Bangladesh. He's going on these Bonnie Tyler's tough." And Mike's like laughing. My brother goes, "You're a legend." And Mike goes, "I'm not a legend." He goes, "Yeah, you're a legend." I mean, and they didn't think of themselves that way. They're just regular guys.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it. And that's exactly how they are, the down-to-earth guys.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's some of the mystique, like you said, that intersected like some of the biggest events in music history.
Yeah.
They never really got swept up in it completely. So,
very matter of fact. It's refreshing, actually.
Yeah.
I appreciate you guys doing what you do. Everything that we're trying to get out there. You guys are just another megaphone for Badfinger, and that's not a bad thing. That's a great thing.
Well, yeah, really enjoyed talking to you about this.
It was great talking to you.
A little more technical. Thank you. All right.
Happy Thanksgiving, brother. You be good.
You'll find me walking in the